Okay, today I'm in Camden Town in London with Alan Alger, who is the head of PR for Betway, if I'm correct, Alan. Now, first straight in, something a lot of people probably don't know, you scored the last goal at Highbury.
Yeah, it's a bit of a, I guess some people might call it a bit of a tenuous claim, but it was the last official match at Highbury with what you would call proper officials and an actual proper 11-a-side game, and it was a charity game, Football Aid, just before the stadium was knocked down. In fact, I think the builders came in the following day, and it was sold on Football Aid for their tremendous charity work they do with Diabetes UK and a few other charities. And I managed to bid to play up front for the home team, as in wearing the home shirts, in the second half of the game. But I think someone didn't turn up, so I managed to get about 10 minutes in the first half as well. And I played up front, and if people know me, I'm actually a defender, so I was appalling, absolutely appalling. I think I took a corner that went out for a goal kick before it even came into play. I don't think I had one shot on target during the whole game, but as people might have seen on the video, we get given the dodgiest penalty you've ever seen in probably the 5th minute of what could have only been 2 minutes of injury time at 3-2 down. And because I'd paid to play up front, it did actually include taking any penalties that occur in the game. So I went and picked up the ball, and as I walked back and the other team were complaining, I did then sort of realise that I was just about to take a penalty that could either be the last goal scored at Highbury or a miss that would haunt me forever. And luckily the keeper was, no offence to him if he's watching, but slightly overweight, so I managed to put it in what I've always said was the top corner postage stamp, but if you look at the replay, it's probably just quite high and just out of his reach. So amazing thing, and something that lived with me forever, and I will bore people to tears with it. And you've opened up with it, so people will be switching off in their droves.
Probably an obvious question, Alan, but you're a big Arsenal fan then?
Absolutely. From the very early 80s when, well, I had 2 uncles, and obviously my dad was a Chelsea fan, one of my uncles was a Tottenham fan, and the other uncle was an Arsenal fan. And I used to go to Chelsea, I used to go to Arsenal quite a lot, I used to go to Tottenham quite a lot, believe it or not, and the local team at the time was Charlton, so I would just go to any football match I could with any of the adults that would take me along. And in fact, if anything, at the time Arsenal were probably in the middle of those sort of 4 teams in terms of success. Tottenham were winning the FA Cup quite regularly, I think they won it in 81 and 82, and Chelsea were doing reasonably well. Arsenal were having a bit of a low period, but I enjoyed going to Arsenal much more, and when it was time to make that decision, I made the decision with Arsenal, and I'd say it probably was the right one overall, and obviously we've had a lot of success. It's great supporting them, and obviously I moan about them quite a lot, especially in the last 10 years, but overall I don't think you can get a better club to support.
So career-wise, you started as a junior trader with Speadex. Where did the interest in betting come from?
I think like a lot of people say in these interviews, it definitely came from my dad. He was a horse racing punter. I remember sitting down watching races with him. I remember being lucky enough to go to a few tracks with him whenever he went with his friends. I think one holiday in Yarmouth was probably the first time I ever went racing. I'm not sure whether it was Lingfield on a sort of bank holiday once or Yarmouth on a family holiday, but definitely Lingfield and Yarmouth were the first 2 courses I ever went to when I was very young, and I just loved everything about it. I was massively interested in the numbers, the atmosphere, everything to do with it, and obviously the part of winning the money and the money involved. Just being given a quid to choose a horse by my dad was, something that I just loved doing, and that interest just grew from there. But I also remember sitting there with my dad a lot of the time on a Saturday, and he'd be like, "Yeah, I've had that horse that's won. I've had that horse that's won." Thinking, "You're staking these wrong. You should be winning lots of money. How comes you're not?" And he's like, "Yeah, but I've done it in such a way," and being fascinated by the way that he would place his multiples, and thinking maybe there was a better way to do it. And I still tell him that now.
So you started with Speadex, a spread bet firm, and then you went to Speadex, and then you suddenly shifted into PR with Sporting Bet. How did that happen?
Well, going back to the City Index answer, being a junior there, obviously they had a big sports spread betting side as well as their financial side, owned by ICAP, big financial institution in the city. I would say I wasn't drifting between roles, but I'd always wanted to be a journalist when I was younger, and that didn't really work out in terms of personal situation and education. I needed to get a job. I ended up in a couple of office jobs that I didn't really enjoy that much. I wouldn't say I absolutely hated them, but I definitely thought there was much more to life. And one particular job that I got stuck in was an insurance telesales job that I absolutely hated. And it was one of those places where you had to put your hand up to go to the toilet. And I don't care whether you're 22, 42, 52, if you're doing that in a job, it's really demeaning, and there's got to be more to life. And I'd obviously kept up an interest in football, sport, betting, was a regular race goer and a regular reader of the Racing Post. And one Saturday, I remember it vividly, I was on a shift at this insurance company and actually really contemplating what I would do next. And it was, bolt from the blue. There was an advert in the paper for junior traders, either with Blue Square, who were part of ICAP at the time, and obviously I ended up working there, so we'll come to that in a bit, and with City Index. And I remember just looking at the advert, applying, and just wanting that more than anything I wanted in my life. And especially when I then went to the interview, I was lucky enough to get an interview. And the first interview I had was quite a tough interview with a guy called Stephen Tucker, who is a sort of very well respected punter in the game. I don't think he's got much of a social profile, but he's still involved heavily. And I remember him drilling me on percentages and the way that bookmaking works, and luckily I think I just about did enough within that interview to still be considered. And then a few changes happened within the company, and that section of the company was actually passed on to someone called Mark Harbour, who Harry Finley will mention quite often in his interviews and books. Harry was a big friend of Mark Harbour. Unfortunately, Mark passed away a few years ago now. He was a big Arsenal fan. And I remember his interview was totally different to Stephen Tucker's interview. His technique was really just to get me to talk about myself. Now, whether or not I'd already had a big box ticked from the first interview, I'll never know to this day. But I remember him almost sort of saying, "Who do you support? Arsenal? Did you go to the game at the weekend? Okay, you'll do for me." And there wasn't very much to it. And there'll be some people now smiling, going, "Yeah, we know you flicked a career in the game," but I just remember thinking this is all I've ever wanted. And when he said, "When can you start?" I didn't even think about the notice period I had with the insurance companies. It's quite funny actually. I kept a load of old letters and correspondence, and I remember I've got a letter from them saying, "You won't be getting a reference from us. We've paid you up to the last date. How dare you leave us in this manner?" And I was just thinking, no, I just want to start this job no matter what. I don't care what I lose. I've already got this job. I don't need a reference from you. And the day I started was the day after Manchester United won the treble. The very next day I went into the offices and started at City Index, and got put next to Ben, sit next to Ben from Star Sports fame, and he was actually younger than me. I was the first junior intake after Ben's intake. And the really interesting thing that then happened at City Index is that they then took on 4 or 5 more juniors and lost a couple of senior staff. Now, I didn't know it at the time, but the reason they lost a couple of senior staff is that City Index were actually trying to get rid of their sports side, and I think a few of the senior traders knew about that and knew that it probably was only going to be around for about another year and a half, 2 years, and they made their move. But them making their move meant that anyone that was on the junior intake got given a hell of a lot of responsibility. I'd definitely say far too early. Definitely in my case, I think Ben was very well up on his numbers and his greyhound trading. But I had expressed an interest in the racing side and got given a hell of a lot of racing to do very early on. And if you think back then, it was the days just before the exchanges, and you were offering, obviously in spreads, you're offering a back lay price. If you're putting up an index, you could sell or buy, and those prices had to be spot on. And to give a junior that responsibility very early on, when they're only just grasping the concept of pricing up to 100% fixed odds and then converting that into a spread price, to go into doing that maybe 3 months, I would say maybe 3 months into the job, I was there trading maybe the fourth biggest meeting of the day. And by the time it came round again to the following June, the deterioration in the senior staff there, again because of the rumours that City Index was just operating as a loss leader for the financial side, and those guys trying to continue their careers, it meant by the time I came in the next June, I actually traded Royal Ascot. All of the indices for Royal Ascot, all of the match bets for Royal Ascot. How we made money that week, I do not know, but that was a baptism of fire to go in and do all that. And essentially you find out then it was because the senior staff, I think it'd be unfair to say that they downed tools, but I think they were well aware that the situation in the company meant that they probably weren't as committed as they should have been. But in some ways that was a really, really good grounding for all the juniors. It really was, because you were thrown in at the deep end, and a few of the football guys have gone on to work at places like Star Lizard, and they've carved out great careers. And obviously you don't go there if you're not shrewd. So I guess that it was an unusual way for people to start their careers, but in a lot of ways I think the vast majority of us benefited from that. And when City Index was sold by ICAP, it was sold to Sporting Index, and a few of the guys had interviews lined up. I think the hierarchy at City Index actually, maybe they felt sorry for the junior traders that had given a lot of work over that year and a half, 2 years. They arranged interviews with Sporting Index for all the juniors, and they also reached out to Speadex as well and asked them if they would take any of the juniors. They were a new spread betting firm at the time, and I think very quickly had an interview with Speadex. I think it was pretty much as soon as I'd had the redundancy handed to me, I'd had an interview arranged with Speadex. We were up in Dunstable at the time, and I remember going up there and getting the job within the first interview, and actually coming out and going to the estate agents there and getting a flat in Dunstable, which if anybody's been to Dunstable, no offence, is probably not something you should do within half an hour of getting the job there. You should probably research it a little bit more, because no detriment to Speadex, who treated me incredibly well, Dunstable wasn't the place to go and flop yourself as a 20-something. And I would say that year and a half, again, no detriment to Speadex, probably the worst year and a half of my life. But obviously there were some good times as well.